Everyone, and welcome to this lecture on Luke's Gospel. So we're moving through the Gospels, trying to kind of make sense of the different versions, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but also kind of focusing on the message. And so thinking about what is the good news? If the gospel is good news, what is the good news? And then how do each gospel writer portray the good news differently? So as we think about Luke and kind of giving a broad outline of Luke's gospel, I think it's important to focus on kind of three things. Number one, the social world of Luke's gospel. And so we're going to see how in Luke, he is concerned about social relations. And at the time, there is a hierarchy of kind of in and out, who's at the top, who's at the bottom. And we'll see and talk a little bit about the importance of eating and kind of overcoming the divisions that exist between people, all in the context of what happened in Eden, this kind of exile, being alienated from God, alienated from one another, and then how is Jesus Christ coming to undo that? And then also the religious world of Luke's gospel. So thinking about the very Jewish perspective of the hope for Israel, the narratives of Abraham and David, but then also the political world. So how is Luke situating the good news in the context of the Roman Empire and the Pax Romana and power, political power? All of these things are coming together in what Luke is doing. And so, what's interesting is how the gospel opens in Luke 1. You hear in the days of King Herod of Judah, everything that Luke is doing, he's situating within the particular kind of political and historical context of the day. And so he'll name these rulers. So King Herod, we'll see in chapter 2, the days of Caesar Augustus. But it opens with Zechariah, a priest, who is, and his wife Elizabeth, and they're not able to have a child. So this should echo back to the Abraham story, where Abraham and Sarah were unable to have a child, and then God comes and says, "You're going to have a child," and she's old, and so she laughs. And here's the same thing, where Zechariah is told that they're going to have a child, and he won't believe it, and so then his mouth is shut. He's not allowed to speak because he doesn't believe that God is going to give them this child. Now, this is also reminds us of the the Samuel and Hannah story. So in 1 Samuel, Hannah is barren and prays for a child, and she's given a child, and that child becomes Samuel, who anoints David. And so in a similar way, John the Baptist, who is going to be the child that is given to Zechariah and Elizabeth, is the Samuel to Jesus now as the new David, and we'll see that here as we keep going. And so it moves then into chapter 1 to Mary receiving word that she is going to have a child, and this child will be the one through whom God is going to deliver God's people. And so Mary goes to visit Elizabeth, and she proclaims this song, and it is called the Magnificat. And it goes like this. It says, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior. For he has looked with favor on the lowliness of his servant. Surely from now on all generations will call me blessed. For the Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is his name. His mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown strength. With his arm he has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lonely. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, according to the promise he made to our ancestors, to Abraham and his descendants forever." Now, this song or prayer connects back to the very prayer or song that Hannah said once she found out that she was also going to have a child. And it speaks about God's deliverance of the people of Israel. And so, again, one of the things I'm trying to get you to think about as we engage the Gospels is that this notion of disconnecting a spiritual heaven from our earthly life is foreign to what the Gospels are about. The Gospels are good news for this world, that Jesus is coming to reorder relations in this world and to take the lowly and to elevate them and to cast down those who are in power. And so you'll see political and economic focus here in this song that is sung about what Jesus is coming to do. And you get a similar song proclaimed by Zechariah, who once John is born, he can speak, and he proclaims something very similar, the salvation of God that is coming through this person who is Jesus. Now, it's also important for us to think about the birth of Jesus in Luke 2. So you have two birth accounts in the Gospels. One is in Matthew and one is in Luke. Matthew's focuses a little more on Joseph and the Magi, and Luke focuses on Mary and the shepherds. But I want you to see how in Luke 2, verse 1, it says, "In those days a decree went out from the Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered." So again, he's situating this in the context of the politics of the day, and it should also be known that Caesar Augustus claimed to be the Son of God and claimed to bring about peace on earth, the Pax Romana, and that through him all of the world would be blessed, that he is the benefactor. And so when you read Luke 2 and you read about Mary and Joseph going to Bethlehem, there's a David emphasis here. But then when it shifts to the shepherds and the angel comes, they start singing, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among those whom he favors." This is a direct reference to Caesar, and it's taking a shot at the politics of the day. Is Caesar the true Son of God? Is Jesus the Son of God? And again, it speaks back to the Magnificat, whereas Caesar is high and mighty, Jesus is born low and in a manger, and yet it is the declaration that this Jesus is the true Son of God, through whom the world would be blessed. So it's important to recognize how the birth of Jesus, again, is situated in this kind of political perspective. And then you get the baptism of Jesus, and again, Luke situates it within his particular context. So he emphasizes the reign of the Emperor Tiberius and Pontius Pilate. You're beginning to get these coordinates where John now goes out into the wilderness and is baptizing people. And you see in Luke 3 the emphasis on the prophets, the prophet Isaiah specifically. So when you think about the Gospel of Mark, how Mark's Gospel is really riffing off of the prophetic hope of Isaiah, you can see how Luke picks up on that same idea. And so Jesus goes out and he is baptized. Now, this is an icon of the baptism, and it got cut off so you can't see it. But underneath Jesus' feet is this kind of serpent. So one of the things that we talked about in the Old Testament is the imagery of the water and the being brought through the water, the chaos of the water. Why is Jesus being baptized? He is putting himself in the place of Israel, who was brought through the Red Sea. And he is the one now who defeats these great chaotic monsters that are wreaking havoc in the creation. Now, from his baptism, Jesus goes out in Luke's gospel to be tempted. The temptations are also found in Matthew's gospel. and they're ordered differently. So they both start with bread. So he's out in the wilderness, just as Israel was out in the wilderness. Jesus goes out there for 40 years, or I'm sorry, for 40 days, kind of remembering the wanderings of the Israelites as they were out in the wilderness. And just as we think about God providing manna in the wilderness, one of the temptations that is given to Jesus is to turn stones into bread. And again, it's this. What's happening here is a question of what kind of Messiah is Jesus going to be? Is he going to be the one that the people expect? Is he going to fit the people's expectations of a Messiah, the one who's going to come and provide and give them food, like Caesar, who comes to be the benefactor? Is he going to use politics? Will he be the political ruler that they want him to be? Will he come to overthrow the political arrangement of the day? And will he use miracles? So turn stones to bread is the first one. He's tempted with being given all of the kingdoms of the world, the political kingdoms, and then to throw himself down from the temple, and that God will protect him. And so the temptation here is really a question of what type of Messiah is Jesus going to be? What is going to be his identity? Is he going to use power to, overt kind of power to get what he wants, spectacle, or will he follow the path of the cross, the suffering servant? And so this is what's going on in the temptations. And then we get to Luke 4. And it's important when we come to recognize what Luke 4 focuses on here. First of all, the temptations, and then Jesus goes into the synagogue, and he opens up a passage from the book of Isaiah, and he reads it. And so it says this: when he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." So what is the year of the Lord's favor? The year of the Lord's favor goes back into the Old Testament. It is the year of Jubilee, where the debts are forgiven. And again, in the Israelite context, ancient Israelite context, there was a sense of there being a division between kind of the poor and those who are struggling and those who are doing well. And what was instituted was a way of trying to prevent that chasm from becoming too big. And so you have the forgiving of debts that took place. It was a year of Jubilee, the cancellation of debts. And this is the year of the Lord's favor that Jesus comes to proclaim through the prophet Isaiah. And so what we're getting here is Jesus' own understanding of his ministry. So we had the temptations, where all of these temptations are like, will you fit the people's expectation? What type of Messiah are you going to be? And then the next thing you see is Jesus going into the synagogue and really defining his ministry according to the prophet Isaiah. Again, the idea of the suffering servant. And so as we think about a theme for Luke's gospel, one of the themes that I would focus on is the inclusion of the excluded. This is what Jesus has come to do. So you get then in Luke 5, the healing of the leper. Who are the lepers? They are people who are excluded because of their illness. And what does Jesus do? He heals him, sends him to the priest, so that not only is the guy healed, but now he is brought back into the community. You have examples of women who are brought into the ministry of Jesus and follow Jesus as disciples. And in fact, Luke's gospel, more than any other one, focuses on the contributions of women to the ministry of Jesus. So even kind of gender, these gender barriers are broken down. Jesus deals with the Gentiles, and he heals the daughter of a Roman centurion and the servant of a Roman centurion. And so you see this kind of breaking down of this Jew-Gentile. And then in Luke 5:27, you have eating with sinners and tax collectors. So what is this about? There was a thing called table fellowship at the time, that it was a hierarchical society. And so people who were of the upper crust couldn't eat with those who were lower. You stayed in your place, and your place was signified by who you could eat with and who you couldn't. So when they find Jesus eating with sinners and tax collectors, it's this notion of table fellowship. Like, what is he doing by eating with this group of people? So again, Jesus is breaking down these divisions that are taking place. And again, it hits on the bigger theme of our alienation from God that we see in Genesis 3, our being kicked out of Eden, and then the alienation that comes and the way sin impacts our life. And really then to recognize Jesus has come to deal with the exile, that the exile is not over, even though they're living back in Palestine, in that area. They're still being ruled over by the Romans. There's still oppression and there's still division. And so Jesus now has come to deal with that problem of exile, to reconcile the people to God. But that reconciliation with God reverberates out into economic and political and social life. And so this is really, I think, the important aspect of Luke's gospel. It's the political nature of Christ's ministry, not politics as far as like Republicans or Democrats here in the United States, but politics with a lowercase p, kind of how do we organize our life together? So really, that's what politics is supposed to be about. It's not supposed to be about hating our enemies. It's supposed to be about finding ways to live together and providing institutions and social life and economic life and ways in which we can live together and function together. And so Luke frames the ministry of Jesus in political terms. Jesus has come to confront the powers of this world, Herod and Pilate and the religious leaders. Jesus is a new king like David. So the story of Jesus' birth and then his baptism, it speaks to that idea of Jesus as the Messiah and the king like David. But also you get these different teachings that he gives, or different episodes. So paying taxes. So he's confronted by Herodians who think that they should pay taxes, and then the Pharisees who would see paying taxes to Caesar as a bad thing. And they both come to Jesus to try to trap him. They say, should we pay the tax? And Jesus recognizes what they're doing, and he asks to see the coin. And this goes back to, I think, a different lecture that we were talking about, but whose face is on the coin? Caesar's. Well, if you flip that coin over, you have a reference to Caesar as being the divine son of the gods. So when Jesus says, give to Caesar what is Caesar and God what is God, we take it today to be like, okay, there's church stuff and there's non-church stuff. But that's not what Jesus is saying. There's no way that could work because Jesus is not going to say that Caesar is divine or God. And so again, it's a challenge. It's a question that really gets at the tension between the proclamation of Jesus being Lord and then the claim of Caesar. And then you get Luke 12, where Jesus says, I've not come to bring peace, but division, father against son, son against father, daughter against mother. So you get all of these different family relationships where there's conflict. Well, when you understand the role of the family, as we talked about with the Old Testament stuff, this makes a lot of sense. That if you were in a household, you needed to believe or be a part of the religion of the father. And now there's an inbreaking of belief in Jesus Christ that is going to break and shatter some of those things. And so it's a challenge of the kind of social and family relationships in existence. And ultimately, in the death and resurrection of Jesus, Luke believes that there's a defeat of the powers of this world, the overcoming of exile, and like Mark's gospel, the coronation of Christ as king. So all of this is just a way to try to understand and frame what Luke is doing in his gospel. Now we'll see when we get to the book of Acts that idea of table fellowship is going to carry over with Peter and Paul and this kind of eating with Gentiles, going to Cornelius's house and eating with them, and how eating becomes a significant symbol of this reconciliation between Jew and Gentile. But for now, we'll move on to looking at John's gospel and thinking a little bit more about how John is framing his understanding of who Jesus is and what Jesus has come to do.